I stuck that presentation on the open media page just as itself. So in the work session, it just says the packet, and then I put that presentation for the study just right underneath it.
Excellent.
Hey, everybody. How's everyone doing?
Doing well, Mayor. How about yourself?
Very good.
That's a great addition, John. Thank you for doing that.
Andy had it a little bit behind, so I just thought that way people could see it or whatever. So
Absolutely.
great.
It's relative.
Uh-oh.
At 5:30, I'll give a couple more minutes before I have Carmen kick us off. Well, it's 5:32. Carmen, thank you very much for joining us. I know I, for one, have got a lot out of your training in years past, and glad to have you with us tonight.
You betcha. Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council. Let's see. Who do we have, or I should say, who do we not? Who are the unfortunate souls who are going to miss out on the scintillating legal training? It looks, oh no, Scott's there. We're missing Counselor Clark.
I did get a text from Counselor Clark saying he was going to be about 10 minutes late.
Okay, but otherwise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who else are we missing?
Well, Lisa will officially get sworn in tonight. So
Right.
let's see here.
There's,
I think it's just Jim.
it's just Jim?
I think so. Mayor Scott, Art, Kate,
That's-
John.
6. Art. Where's Art?
No, he was here 1 second ago.
He was here.
Might have gotten booted. I'm not sure. He didn't say anything.
Okay. All right. I didn't think I was that bad at math. All right. Well, Art will probably come back if he can. He's had some issues before, the dreaded update that happens right when you want to really get something done on your computer or some other thing. But we'll trust that Councilor Cacavelli will come back. But we'll kick it off. I know you, Mayor and Council, have 3 things to talk about tonight. And honestly, they're all, I think, all 3 you could probably talk about for hours and hours and hours on end. Maybe not hours and hours and hours, but quite some time. You've got a lot of meat on the bone of tonight's study session. And I learned, thanks to the internet gremlins, you've got a regular meeting after this one at promptly at 7 to make up for the weirdness of last week. So
Yeah.
I will do my best to maybe take half an hour here of your time, maybe a little after 6, and take a big fat pause then and breath and invite any questions or anything else. Because again, I know you've got another couple of meaty subjects to deal with as well. But even having said that, Mayor and Council, at any point, I encourage you to interrupt me. I know it's in Zoom, so that's sometimes a little harder. But please do, if there is anything that I say or you feel I didn't address that you want to talk about a little bit further, or you just want to interrupt while something's fresh in your mind, please feel free to do that. As I mentioned, and I hope you've all had a chance, even if real briefly, to look at the memo that I put in your packets. It's really brief. It's bullet pointed about big picture topics that I'd like to get to and cover. And as I said at the introduction of that memo to you all, this training is good in several ways. It makes CIRSA happy, and we want to make CIRSA happy. It gives us points on our insurance coverage. For even those of you who have been on council a long time, and that's a lot of you, which is great to have such an educated and experienced group of people. Even we who are experienced in this for some time sometimes benefit from going over some things, and new things pop up in the law from time to time. And I'm happy to cover those. So for a number of reasons, I'm glad that y'all could come, and Counselor to be Manifold, I'm glad that you are joining us too, because even though you're our newest member of council, probably, you have sat on city boards before, and you do have some experience in local government. So not even our newest council member is a complete neophyte to local government and how we do things. So I will start off again sort of by starting to tick through the issues that I've outlined in the memo that was in your packets. And these are what I think the main big picture kinds of issues that I either think are important for you to know at just sort of your base level of knowledge, and or that I get the most questions about. And I do represent not only Idaho Springs, but other jurisdictions. And so I do have some experience with the sort of things that kind of perpetually come up to both elected and appointed officials. So I've tried to hit kind of the greatest hits, if you will, of the legal issues that come up with officials. And to start that off from a big picture perspective, often in Idaho Springs in particular, when we work together, as I've worked with the city in the past few decades, the issue of home rule and statutory has come up. And what the heck is the difference? And why are people talking about that? And why do we even care? And does it matter, lawyer? And the answer is home rule municipalities and statutory municipalities are quite different. And yes, it does matter. In the day-to-day, it may not matter a lot. And on the surface level of what cities do, it may not seem to matter much. A lot of how we function and we are Idaho Springs, we are a statutory city. A lot of what we do and how we function is the same as the city and county of Denver or Aurora or Lakewood or any number of home rule municipalities. We sort of walk and whack the same as those municipalities in a lot of ways. However, the main difference is home rule municipalities, which are formed under a home rule charter and governed by a home rule charter. They, because of the existence of their own little home rule charter, they have, in some instances, more broad authority than we do as a statutory city. As a statutory city, we are absolutely bound by and governed by and restricted by what state law says we can do or what state law says we can't do. And we, much as we sometimes don't like that, are absolutely bound by that. Home rules, on the other hand, do have more latitude than we, if their home rule charter says they do. In what possible ways? In how they run their elections, in the qualifications of the people who serve on council, that can be set by charter. There are laws sometimes that the state legislature passes that only restrict statutory cities. Now, sometimes there's litigation to get there, but whether it's under the express terms of the statute or by challenge, and usually that's Denver that steps up and challenges for all the home rules because they have the most money. But in either way, eventually it's borne out that home rules have more authority, let's say, in the issues of firearm regulation. Denver had a big victory in that several years ago. They wanted to restrict firearms more strictly than the state did. And they were able to because they were home rule. That decision did not inure to any change here in Idaho Springs. Prohibition of particular dog breeds, right? Pit bull ordinances. Those are a uniquely home rule authority that home rule municipalities have local authority to regulate more broadly than we do as a city. Basically, point is, as a statutory city, what we get to do as a city is decided by the folks under the Golden Dome, really. I mean, what areas we can govern in, not how we govern, but the areas that we govern in are strictly defined by those folks. Home rules are a bit broader. If you, mayor and council, or your constituents were ever interested in converting to a home rule municipality, we can do that. It is a process. It is a voter-driven process, at least in terms of approval. The city electors would have to approve they would have to approve both putting together a charter, like the very act of trying for that would be voter approved. And then ultimately the charter would be voter approved. I mean, that's like our mini constitution if we had one. So it's all driven by the electors. That's a pretty big process. If you or your constituents were ever interested in that, I'd be happy to get into more of the weeds of it, but it is, I think, something baseline for you to know, especially as a statutory city and a counselor who represents a statutory city, because you might have occasion to be talking to another elected official in another jurisdiction who says, hey, we adopted a law that did XYZ. You should do that too, Idaho Springs, or take that to your council. And that may be a great idea. Know that not always municipalities have equal footing in terms of the kinds of things that they can legislate. So just keep that in mind. I'll just keep going until someone interrupts me. But again, please feel free if anybody has any questions while I'm going. Next big topic I wanted to cover was the role and the responsibility of the city council, of you fine folks, as it relates principally to other city boards and commissions, and then also city staff. So taking the first issue first, how does this council, this group of 7, how do you relate to other boards and commissions? And the, I guess, maybe plain English or simple answer to that question is, however much or really however little you want as a group, I've seen many governing bodies have regular representatives to other city boards and commissions, whether they're called reps or liaisons or whatever. Many governing bodies want to have and do have at least one person sort of as a regular bridge to other boards and commissions. There's no law that says you have to in Idaho Springs. We have done that, and the council has done that in the past. Council has also not done that in the past, and either approach is okay. It is really an intra-city, intra-official relationship dynamic that's up to you in terms of how involved and connected you want to be. I will say, I've also, and I do also, advise not only governing bodies like you folks, city councils, I also govern, or I don't govern, I also advise planning commissions, variance boards, sustainability boards, all kinds of boards in various jurisdictions. And I'll tell you, in my humble experience and opinion, all of those boards and commissions work really hard for the same goal as you, which is effective governance of the city. And the way it's supposed to work is each sort of board and commission has their own little territory of expertise. You got the planning commission with their land use expertise. You got HPRC with their historic preservation expertise. Your variance board is like the parent who has to say no, and you got to follow the rules, and they get to do that hard and heavy task for you. And in places with sustainability boards, they count on that group of people to be sort of the experts in that one field. And you, council, the way it's again supposed to work is you draw upon those boards and commissions, and they're your fellow citizens who are also donating their time and evenings to meet, and they are giving you their opinion and advice oftentimes on their particular area of expertise. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with them all the time. It doesn't mean you have to follow their advice all the time, but I encourage you to consider heavily, right, and rely upon and accept the input that those boards and commissions give to you when it filters up. Sometimes things are done at their level, but their job and the whole idea of having boards and commissions and other sorts of bodies here in any local government is that they get to take something off your plate, consider it really heavily and carefully, and do that work for you, and then share that with you as appropriate. So however much or little you want to sort of have an interpersonal or inter board and commission relationship with those groups, any approach is fine. I've seen lots of approaches in different places. And so wanted to mention that real quickly. Also, just as importantly, what is your role as council with city staff, if any? And this is maybe an easier question. That's that you're, as council members and even as a whole as council, your relationship and direct interaction with city staff should be next to nothing, very little. I highly encourage you to stay away from city staff. And I don't mean that in a negative way at all, or that I don't care about them. I care very much about them, and I care very much about you. And we have a form of government here where you as council, as you know, have delegated, and it's sort of a tree branching down from you. You oversee, he's underneath of me in my square, but he might not be in yours, but you oversee the Mr. Marsh guy. And he is the big sort of COO of this organization. You oversee and you direct him and give him direction. He in turn oversees, and now, right, we recently changed this, oversees department heads who oversee their respective employees. So like a little phone tree, sort of, or any organizational chart. But you, council, and I find this is somewhat counterintuitive, it is not incumbent upon you, to know the business and the ins and outs and the particular employee issues in each department in the city. You have and should, just like boards and commissions, delegate that hard work of this municipal corporation to someone else. And you have, to Mr. Marsh, and then to department heads. And not only does that take a task and a burden off of your plate, it also protects you, and this is very important, it protects you from potential liability if you step outside of your role and try to or attempt to give direction to, let's say, one of John's employees. Hey, I don't like the way you are driving that snowplow, or how long you been on break? I'm gonna write you up because I'm Councilor Curtis, and do you know who I am? I mean, if you were to, council, get into the weeds with employment issues, you are stepping outside of your defined role and your authority as a council member. And not only would that annoy John, I'm sure, Bordoni, maybe Curtis as well. Not only would you risk sort of ruffling the feathers of the department head and Andy by doing such a thing, if that employee, let's say, took your direction to do this another way, to perform their work in another way, or to do a certain task for you. Hey, could you do this for me? Do you know who I am? Write this memo for me, or stick some postage on this for me, or whatever. God forbid, whatever task that you had directed an employee to do or not do then results in a claim against the city. Guarantee you would be individually named as someone along the chain of events that kicked off that claim, that legal claim. And neither I nor Cirsa would be able to assist you much in your legal defense, either providing that defense or paying for it, if what had led to the claim was something that you had done that was outside of your proper role, okay, and the scope of your authority. So please understand, it's not because none of you are nice people or that we think that you would, like I say, order employees around. Not that at all. It is really maintaining sort of the organizational integrity of how things are done and who manages whom. And it protects everybody from the top down if we all sort of stay in our lanes. All right, I'm going to speed up now because I could talk about all this stuff forever. How the council takes action, real quickly. Ordinances, resolutions, motions. Oftentimes, if something is like your minutes, right, or you want to express approval of something that's going to be written up like a contract, something that exists in writing in that way, a motion will suffice. Oftentimes, statements of policy like proclamations or supports of ballot questions, those are often resolutions. But whenever we do something permanent in nature, like amend our code or spend money, and is that permanent? In some ways, I guess. it can't be done, sort of taken back. But we do those kinds of sort of super important things on the hierarchy of importance and permanence. We do those by ordinance. I mentioned that you don't really have to worry about that other than to know that there are different ways for you as a council to take action. We as staff really try to queue up the appropriate form of action for you to take. Voting duties and obligations. I get asked this a lot, and it is recusal. And, what about, a vote that is, sort of starts down one end of the dais when we can meet in person, when it is Zoom, when we can't. And it goes through the votes, Counselor, Jones, Counselor Smith, aye, Counselor Beery, nay. And we get to the counselor, and she or he says, oh, recuse, not gonna vote. And when is that okay? When is that not okay? And I get that a lot. And maybe not surprisingly, seems to come up a lot when they're hot button, hot topic issues. And the room is full of people again, and we can meet in person again. And there's a lot of tension about maybe a vote. And I'll tell you this, this relates also to conflicts of interest, but generally speaking, council, you've been entrusted by the electors of the city to represent them and vote. And sometimes that will be very hard. Sometimes that'll be very easy. But that is your role. That is your job. And it is the unusual circumstance that you will have a legitimate reason to say, I'm recusing. Those few circumstances, I hope they're few, because the legitimate reasons for you to recuse or abstain, however you want to put it, from a vote, the few legitimate reasons are usually conflicts of interest, right? You have a legal conflict with the matter before you, which means you have a personal stake in it, a financial stake in it. You or your spouse or your business, right, have skin in the game, as it were. If you have a financial interest, a personal interest, that is a clear legal conflict of interest for which I will tell you, you have to abstain and go away. When council talks about this, actually, don't even vote, but don't even talk with them about it, lest you be seen as influencing the discussion. So in that case, that's a legal, legitimate reason to abstain from a vote. If it's a quasi-judicial issue, a hearing on like a license application or a land use application, those are quasi-judicial issues. If you know on that kind of a hearing that you have a bias, you have prejudgment, you can't be neutral and a blank slate and a neutral arbiter of what is being asked to be decided. If you know that, that's a legitimate reason. Now, it would never, I hope, come to the point of the vote where all of a sudden you spring that on the rest of council and me and everybody and the applicant, right? I mean, if you know that you have a bias or some sort of issue, or even if you suspect that you might, please share that with Andy and me. If you just want to share it with me, that's fine, to sort of see if you have an issue. But prejudgment, bias, legal conflicts of interest, those are the reasons that you can legitimately say, I'm not going to participate in this because I can't. Short of that, council, once again, that's really sometimes the really tough job that you have is expressing your vote and opinion, because your vote is 1/7, right, of the opinion of the people of the city of Idaho Springs. And that's what they elected you to do, is speak for them and vote on things that are important. How the agenda is set, anybody know? Okay. I won't even go through that because it's almost 6 o'clock. Open meetings law, rocketing right along down my little outline. Also known as the sunshine law, right? Because the sun will shine. We won't do government business behind closed doors or in darkness. We shall be open and visible as a city council when we conduct city business. And that applies to you as well as to other city boards and commissions. And simply put, the open meetings law requires all meetings of 3 or more of you. And note that it's 3 or more of you. A quorum of you folks is 4. Technically under parliamentary rules, it's over a majority of you. However, the sunshine law, and that's a state statute, that requires that a gathering of 3, so under a quorum, or more of you shall be held in public after public notice has been given of the meeting, after we post an agenda of things we're going to talk about, at least 24 hours in advance, and at which the public, right, they can attend, they can come to that, and they can watch you have discussion about the city's business at your particular meeting. Again, same for planning commission, same for variance board, same for HPRC. You are all governed by this sunshine law. And I mention that simply because in a place as small as Idaho Springs, a community as small as ours, y'all might see each other in groups of 3 or more outside of a council meeting. And what do you do then? And should you be concerned about that? Sometimes we get that question. And the answer is the sunshine law does allow and recognize that there will be chance gatherings. Perhaps you run into each other someplace and we're planning on it. Well, that's not governed by the sunshine law. And it says, hey, this law that says you have to post an agenda 24 hours in advance doesn't apply to chance encounters like that. Now, do us all a favor, and if you do somehow by chance run into each other somewhere, don't talk about city business if you can help yourself, because that's when we start to potentially get into issues if you use a chance encounter as a way to talk about city business outside of the sunshine. Also, social gatherings are also expressly exempted from the sunshine law by its very terms. Yes, Councilor Manifold.
My question is actually, it's not so much a city business, but one of the things that we talked about several meetings ago was counselors going out into the community and meeting with their constituents. So there are 3 counselors in Ward 2. If the Ward 2 council member said, hey, we're going to do a coffee, meet and greet, how does that fall under the sunshine law?
Great question. It would be covered by the sunshine law, right? Because there'll be a group of 3 or more of you folks meeting somewhere to get together to talk about city business. And I'm really glad you brought it up, because it's important to understand the sunshine law applies when you all talk about city business and issues within your policy-making authority, even when you don't vote on it, even when you couldn't vote on it, right? Like, we post notices. This is a good example right now of this study session. And we always post notice of our study sessions, even though we as staff don't ask you to vote on anything during them, because we're talking about city business and people need to be able to watch and hear you. So, Councilor Manifold, and that's perfectly fine. If a particular ward wants to have all your counselors meet with your constituents somewhere, just let us know. Here at City Hall, we slap up the notice that this is the date and time that Ward 2 or Ward 1 is going to have a coffee talk with their counselors, and anybody who wants to come can come. You're covered and we're good. So I appreciate you asking the question. Moving quickly, the one exception that you will see that we sometimes have here in regards to the Sunshine Law and an exception to it. And it is somewhat unusual, but we do sometimes have the need as a council to have what are called executive sessions. And those are essentially private sessions without the public watching. And as you can imagine, those are intended to be, and they are, the exception to the rule and rather extraordinary. And sort of like abstentions, there better be a darn good reason why we're deviating from what the usual rules are by having a closed door meeting. And that is governed by state statute. It's a very discrete and limited list of reasons why we can meet in executive session. When that's one of my jobs is to tell and help staff determine when we can do that and when we can't. But just for your, gee whiz, we can use executive sessions and often do when we're talking about pending litigation, right? For which I want to give you legal advice. Threatened litigation, threatened claim for which I want to give you legal advice. If we're negotiating, we are permitted to, up to a point, talk about potential property acquisitions. If the city wants to buy property, boy, it would be unfair, wouldn't it, if we had to make public what we were going to offer, right? Eventually, when we spend public monies, that becomes public, and it should. Whether it's purchasing a property or negotiating other issues, the law does allow you as council to keep some negotiating power and authority to have executive sessions to talk about negotiations on some things. So we do have executive sessions from time to time. Quickly, conduct of meetings is the next broad topic. And I won't actually cover that too much because I think y'all know pretty well how to follow an agenda, that we have these things called study sessions as opposed to business meetings. Study sessions we use to, kind of do the hard work of making the sausage before it actually gets out of the grinder in a business meeting and you vote. Work sessions and study sessions can be great opportunities to have free-flowing dialogue with each other that is maybe less formal. Not that we're ever terribly formal, but we do in business meetings have an agenda and do have rules of procedure and certain rules of decorum. Study sessions are more free-flowing discussions and the way for you all to really do some hard work in working through policy issues before it comes time to vote, which are what your business meetings are about. So I'll briefly mention that. Public hearings, I'm gonna go to public hearings and the quasi-judicial process and then pause because it's 5 after 6. And see if I'll throw it over to the next topic then, unless there are questions, which I'm happy to take. But the last thing I want to quickly say, public hearings and the quasi-judicial process. Fortunately, I know our newest counselor, Counselor Manifold, has experience in this as well. So I know all of you do also, current council members. But please remember, when we have these things labeled and conducted as public hearings within a public meeting, and as we know, all our meetings are public under the Sunshine Law. And sometimes during a public meeting, we have a public hearing, and Wonder swears people in, and it's announced as a public hearing, and you can tell, and there are lots of cues for you that that's what we're about to do, is to conduct a public hearing, and you'll see it in your packet before that night. I mean, that as well. There are constitutional, principles that apply to quasi-judicial hearings, just like constitutional principles apply to hearings and, let's say, criminal trials and civil trials. Any kind of trial in a courtroom, those sort of core fundamental principles of what's called due process under the law also apply to hearings that you conduct as a city council. And that means that everybody involved, everybody who has a legal interest in a hearing that you conduct has certain protections of due process. That means, and that's usually the applicant, the person who is asking you for a liquor license or for a marijuana license or for a conditional use permit or for a subdivision approval. The applicant has a legal interest in what's going on in the hearing, so that person has due process rights. Oftentimes, a limited number of other people have due process rights. For a lot of land use issues, that's the very closest adjacent neighbors, people who usually get letter notice of a hearing. Those people have due process rights. And anybody who has those kinds of rights has the right to be heard, to give testimony, to give evidence, to cross-examine others who provide evidence, to provide rebuttal, to be represented by counsel if they want. And you, counsel, because of the due process rights that folks have who have a legal interest, have an obligation to come to a quasi-judicial hearing, as I alluded to before, without any bias, without any prejudgment, without any idea of how you are going to vote or what your decision will be before you hear and accept all the evidence and testimony. And other attendant rights sort of follow as the hearing goes on, and even after it's concluded, there are some due process rights that attach to those kinds of issues, like the right to appeal it, right to another authority, to a higher board, or in your case, counsel, to the district court. That's where decisions of yours, if they are subject to appeal, they go to district court in Clear Creek County. The right to appeal is another right that attaches to a quasi-judicial matter. And for that reason, again, it's incumbent upon you to share with me or Andy or Jared, maybe if you feel comfortable talking to him, if it's a land use issue. If you feel you might have a conflict of interest or an issue of bias and prejudgment, and you're worried or concerned about that, and you want to sort of check in with us as staff, please feel free to do that and reach out to us to ask about that. Because we as staff can give you advice on that topic. And if you need to step away or make certain disclosures, I can help you with that, with the legal process of going through that as well. There are some statutory allowances to have a conflict and still have it be okay. Perfect example, Councilor Clark. He doesn't have a conflict. Well, he could have a conflict because we as a city sometimes contract with Allied to do work for us, to do some towing work for us and storage, right? Well, he's on council once he was elected to council. Yay, great day for him. But did he as a business owner then lose that contract? No. But to maintain Councilor Clark's good standing, right, as a city councilor, there is a statutory process by which we had to notify the Secretary of State that he was now an Idaho Springs councilor, that he would sometimes have bills for services that would go in front of council for payment, that we would separate them out and we vote on them separately, right? So there are steps that we can take to maintain your ability to sit. If you're worried about something, just talk to us and we'll figure out how to deal with it. So 10 after, I'm going to stop. I didn't get through absolutely everything, but I do want to respect the two other items on your agenda. Anybody have questions or things you want to go back to, or things you real quickly want me to cover? I don't want to step on the other things that you have. I'm also willing to come back another time. Well, come back. I'm always here. We can do this again another time also.
And I want to thank you for being respectful of the time, but I was really hoping you could go into ex parte communication for a moment.
You betcha. And that relates to quasi-judicial hearings. And as I mentioned, this sort of dovetails nicely with what I just covered. Ex parte means, right, talking to one party only, outside of the presence of the other party. The lawyers love their Latin for some reason, so I'm going to translate everything. And again, when we're talking about the due process rights that those who have a legal interest in quasi-judicial hearings, part of their due process rights, again, is to have the ability to provide evidence and testimony, and then rebut evidence and testimony, and or cross-examine folks who may have a differing opinion. So the problem presented by ex parte communications, again, those are defined as communications with an interested party, a party with a legal interest in a matter, and a communication between the decision maker, you folks, or any one of you folks, and one of those interested parties outside of the hearing. So that's conversation with an applicant at the Safeway. That is a conversation with the neighbor of somebody who has a variance application after church. That is a conversation that's an electronic conversation, email correspondence, text, any kind of communication with an interested party outside of the hearing. Why that presents a legal problem, let's put aside the issue of you're having a communication that the rest of your council doesn't have the benefit of hearing, right? And that's a problem for me and you. It's a problem for you as a group because you're not all getting the same evidence. It's a problem for me because I can't include that on the record on appeal. If it gets appealed, because I don't know about it, it's not made a part of the record. But it additionally compromises the due process rights of, let's call it, the other side. If it's the neighbor who doesn't want the variance applied for by their neighbor, that applicant for the variance now, you have absolutely violated their due process rights by having a backdoor communication with the other side. And I'll tell you, if that ever comes to light, we will probably, right, face an appeal as a city, and you'll pay my office money to defend a loser of a case, and we'll lose on appeal, and hope that we don't get sued in some other way for damages that maybe arise from right, the variance wrongfully getting denied, all kinds of legal issues and problems we would have if ex parte communications occur and they never come to light, or they do come to light and we don't handle them properly. Just like conflict of interest in the example I gave about Jim and how we handle that contract that he has with the city when he got on city council, there are ways to handle ex parte communications if they happen and you can't stop them from happening. Let's say you heard all this, you have no intention of having backdoor communications or doing anything inappropriate, but nonetheless, someone approaches you and just starts blah, 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 telling you what they think about a hearing you know you're going to have next week at council. You can't unring a bell. What do you do then? What do you do if you can't go back in time there? You're not stuck necessarily. Share that, disclose that ex parte communication with me again, and I can help us deal with it on the record at the hearing. Probably I could ask you some questions on the record about what happened, what you did, whether you think that it affects your ability to be neutral, and the benefit, yay, of disclosing that at the hearing. Not only could we will probably be able to preserve your right to vote, but we also, the other side now knows about it, don't they? It's no longer something that happened back channel in the dark and is ostensibly or allegedly unfair. By disclosing it, if we know about it, we can accomplish some rehabilitative goals and we can do some things on the record that can make it okay. But it's very important that we know about those if those communications do happen to any one of you in a way that it took you by surprise and you couldn't help it. Okay, let us know. And please also do this if you can. Nicely, but as clearly and nicely as you can, let that person, your constituent, know, whoa, 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 I'm so sorry, gotta stop you. I have to stop you because I can't have this communication with you alone. You need to bring that really important input to the whole group. Come to the hearing. I can't be the only one who hears this. It's a legal problem for me to be the only one. Oh, and by the way, you can't come. Here's Wonder Martell's email address or Jared Shipman's email address. Email them the comments that you want to make in time enough to get that in front of everybody. Whatever the person may, sort of give you as the reason why they just want to talk to you, as nicely as you can, cut that off and say, I need to get this for the whole group. The whole group needs your important opinion on this. And that's, again, ex parte contacts. That's what they are, how we can deal with them. And finally, I think this often goes maybe not emphasized enough, but remember that that's the rule for quasi-judicial issues only, right? So don't leave this evening thinking you can never talk one-on-one with your constituents about things. Absolutely you can, and you should. That's what you're there for them. It's only quasi-judicial issues when we have hearings, right? That this rule don't have those communications. That's only for quasi-judicial issues. So do remember that. Don't be discouraged. If there's public listening, we're not trying to discourage you. Reach out to your council members. That's what they're there for, to be your voice. Just know for quasi-judicial, it's a little different, and we need to be cognizant of those ex partes. So I'll stop there, Mayor.
All right, well, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Carmen?
I know that was a lot. Sorry.
Lisa?
Of course, I have another question. This actually skips down to your next session. Could you, and we can make it brief. I can get, further from you at a later date. Conflict versus appearance of impropriety. I'm familiar with conflict of interest, but what are the state statutes as far as appearance of impropriety?
There, the statutes really concern conflicts, right? And more than appearance of impropriety. And that's kind of why I wanted to briefly mention that there's a distinction there. A true conflict of interest, again, is having a direct financial interest, right, in the outcome of a matter. And again, that can be as simple and straightforward as your business. Let's say, none of you have restaurants now. Well, you will use Mayor Hillman as an example. When Mayor Hillman, if and when the wildfire needed a liquor license and they had to apply, let's say they had to apply for a new one to city, and that goes to city council. Clearly, Mayor Hillman or any restaurant owner who sits on council could not sit. That's a clear conflict of interest, a direct interest in the outcome, financial direct interest, personal or financial, in the outcome of something. And statutes prohibit you from voting on that. Again, that's something that I'd take you through and analyze, and we'd probably, we'd have you abstain and recuse. There, short of that, however, I find, I'll use another example on this, Councilor Manifold, real quickly, an example of something that's lesser than a true conflict of interest, and yet maybe an appearance of impropriety. Councilor Collier will remember this. Actually, Councilor Curtis probably will too, because you were on, Scott, you might as well. We on council, and now I'm blanking on his name. You know who I'm talking about, Andy. Man, Jason Siegel. It takes a while for the brain and then it catches up. All right, Councilor Siegel, which, hey, Jason, if you're out there, but he sat on council for several years and worked for a local marijuana store. And as you remember, when marijuana rolled out in Colorado, it was somewhat controversial in some places, somewhat not. Idaho Springs clearly decided to allow a certain number. And at the time decided, well, what should be the laws for Idaho Springs about how to govern sales of marijuana and marijuana regulation? Again, in the infancy of all this happening. And when it was a very hot topic, right? Councilor Siegel, even though he was employed by one of those marijuana stores, was absolutely entitled to, as a city councilor, participate in discussion and voting on legislation, it's not quasi-judicial, policy that would affect the industry in the city. He had no direct financial interest. No bonus was going to come his way from his employer if laws were passed one way or another about marijuana regulation. And when you think about it, they couldn't incentivize that to him because he was one of 7. He didn't decide anything as a person, right? So he could absolutely legally still have participated in lots of those discussions about what should be the rules that govern this industry, what should be the laws about these businesses that apply to all businesses in the city. But Councilor Manifold, to your point, he decided for his own ethic that that was too much of an appearance of impropriety, that there would be too many questions, that it would look too fishy, and he was just uncomfortable personally and ethically participating in that because of the appearance of impropriety. And so that's a good concrete example of when, look, even though I said all I said about it's your duty to vote, and it is, there are some occasions that we all will recognize it's not a true legal conflict, but boy, is it bumping up close to there where you're just you think the better course would be to back off. And that's usually absolutely perfectly okay with the rest of council if you do that. So with that, any other questions? Okay.
All right. Well, Carmen, thank you very much. Going to move down to the water and sewer rate relief discussion with Wonder. Wonderful. Wonder, that was a great report. Seems like we've been doing the right thing for some time now, affecting 8 people. I remember some years ago it was less, but I'm happy to say that it tends to stay in the $8,000 range. Isn't really appreciably going up. And I did see that it's a pretty low threshold for qualification. But looked like a really good report.
Thank you. I appreciate that,
Mr.
Mayor.
Mayor, can I, this is Arthur, can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Art, you sound good, Art.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Jonathan, I got picked off the computer, the PC's updating, all kinds of things all of a sudden. So I'm you guys fortunately don't have to look at me, but I agree, Mr. Mayor. Wonder those were 2 great reports. The letters to begin with, and then the report thereafter with the statistics. Unfortunately, I believe that some of it's obsolete. I believe that going forward, we needed to calculate other numbers. When we refer to it's only $10.34 a month, that's $120 a year. And that's compounded on all the raises that have occurred in the last, how many years? I know I was here for the previous one, and I don't know how many took place before that. So we're compounding the rates over the rates that have been put on before, and that's a compounding number. If you had an investment, you would be compounding very quickly and have great returns. Unfortunately, it's not that situation here. Some of the things that I think we need to take into consideration, I know you're all going to vote for a yes anyway, but this inflation situation is quite devastating, and it's affecting people all over. The rates for savings rate last year up until the November, December was 9% as a whole throughout the country. And it started to decline and it fell to 7.5% in November, December. and then anticipate that the savings rate will decline quite rapidly the rest of this year, meaning that people are using their savings to pay for the groceries and the bills and the water bills and the taxes and such. So I think you have to take that into consideration. The real inflation rate they show, they show it as 7.1. The real inflation rate, when you take in the groceries, what have you, the hidden inflation. When you got companies like General Mills who takes their family size cereal box and reduces it by an ounce, that's not considered into the 7.1. That's shrinkage inflation, as they call it. And when you calculate things like that are going on in the grocery business, restaurants and other areas, the inflation rate is at least 10 to 11%, depending who you read and how you calculate it. So those are just a couple of things that I think, although these were good reports, the next reports may not be as good. I hope they are. I still believe that the rates, that we're going through are way too high. I'm very disappointed that us as a group couldn't come up with something more creative. And obviously, if you have a relief plan for people who can't pay, it's quite obvious that we think, in essence, that our rates are going to be very high. And if I remember right, Mr. Mayor, you calculated out, I don't know how many years into the future, and the rate for sewer and water was going to be quite expensive, if I remember right. I don't remember your numbers, but they were very high. And
Yes, sir.
very,
600. It was $690 in 9 years. That's for an average resident.
Right. So when we say $120 a year, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you calculate everything else, property taxes going up, utility taxes going up, and all the inflation and what have you, I just think that we're going to burden our residents beyond belief. But I hope I'm wrong, But I think you have to calculate what's going on now, not what happened in 2018, which was very good, and I appreciate that. And we also have to remember that maybe it didn't hit us quite as hard when the pandemic was starting, because the government was quite generous with their stimulus plans. Anyone who was on unemployment got, I believe, $300 extra a week for I don't know how long. That contributed very strongly to the savings going up. Besides, when going back to work, the increase in wages. But when they calculate the real inflation, the wages are not actually keeping up with the real inflation. So I just wanted to add that, because I think it's necessary that we look at everything. And when we hear and see numbers, I think it's our obligation to dig deep underneath the line where the real numbers exist, not the line where the numbers are tomorrow's headlines. Thank you for listening to me again, guys. I appreciate it.
Art, those were great
I'm done.
points, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but that 7.1% inflation is not even across the nation. Colorado was actually 8.29, so it's even worse. And
Thank you. Thank you for that. I was just taking averages, but that's a very good number to look at.
yeah, and I'm glad Wonder, I found it very interesting that she was processing like 70 shutoff notices when she was first hired, and there hasn't been any lately. So I'm glad that at least that's on the right trend.
And I hope there's none in the future. That's very devastating to someone.
Me too. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else have anything else on the rate increases? Or rate relief, I should say. Yes, Wonder.
I kind of have a side note. So as you know, we have a new utility billing clerk. She's really, really good. She's doing quite well. And she took it upon herself to contact, let's say, the 8 consistently delinquent accounts, and 5 of them paid off completely. and one signed up for a payment plan.
Oh, that's outstanding.
So
Thank you.
that balance of 8 is dropped down to 2,900.
All right.
So that's pretty good. She's done a great job
Sure is.
and got somebody to sign up for a payment plan, which it's hard to get people to do that. So we have one. So that's good.
Well,
news.
that is some good news. Thank you, Wonder.
You're welcome.
Hey, Chief, we got about half an hour. Did we shortchange you too much on your presentation?
Oh, not at all. In fact, I think we'll be done. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that, but I think we'll be done before 7 o'clock for sure, unless there's
All
a lot
right.
of questions.
All right, good deal.
Okay. Well, great. I was actually assuming I wouldn't have time. So, but I'm prepared, and I'm going to share my screen here and see if I can't get us rolling on that here. Here we go. All right. So hopefully you folks are you seeing that okay?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. All right. So this is, I just wanted to put together it's an annual report. I think it's important that council and the public are aware of what's working at the police department and where we need to improve, and the direction we're headed and the direction I'd like to take the organization. And so being that I was sworn in on April 5th of last year, I felt it was important to put together some information to provide to council and the public as far as the police department. So I did put this in here that we started back in 1873. And one of the things that we're actually doing, we have the little project going on at the police department. We've got some paint going in and some laminate flooring. And one of the things that I did was I went and met with Tracy over at the visitor center and talked about maybe looking for some artifacts for the police department. So that's a little project I'm working on. I need to find Bob and obviously tap into his knowledge, but that's one of the things that we're working on right now for 2022. But obviously a community that is a hardworking community. So one of the things that we did, we updated our mission statement to include integrity and safety through constitutional policing and dedication to our community. And Councilman Clark mentioned once that he appreciated that, and I appreciated that folks noticed that, because that's really just going back to the core of what you sign up to do, right? And so that those words mean something. So you'll see that those words not only on our annual report, but around our building, and it's on our evaluations. It's really important to us as a group. So I'm not going to bore you with this slide here, but I did want to put some information in there about when I started and some of the things that we had a challenging year in 2021. We all know that we've lost a few officers. We had a serious use of force incident that it was handled appropriately, but doesn't lessen the burden on the agency and the community and council also. So it was a little bit of a challenging year. However, we're doing okay, and I'm confident that we're moving in a good direction. Council was great at supporting us and raising the base salary. And I should apologize to Councilman Cacavelli, because he can't see these slides and what I'm presenting, but I think they might be in your packet. So I also want to go ahead.
That's okay, Chief.
So I put in here the goals for the agency, and obviously hiring is the most important thing, because we need to be staffed so that we can then start focus on the number 2, which is training. And that's what really makes a professional organization. When you're staffed and you're training folks, and then one of these, and you'll see in number 2 is have the officers put on some training and the corporals put on some training, because we all know that when you're teaching, you've got to know your stuff, and you've got to be able to answer questions, and it really helps you grow as a professional when you have to teach other people. So I also would thank council because council, we did increase the budget in our training budget a little bit for next year, which is fantastic. So, but again, we've got to get people hired so that we can afford to send them to training, meaning we have enough people to cover the street. I'll touch on also number one, I went past it not on purpose, but the code enforcement officer. So the code enforcement officer just recently attended a week-long traffic investigation school that was put on by the Greater Metro Training Region. It was free. And so what I intend to do is to have the code enforcement officer start to help with minor traffic crash investigations. That's pretty common in a lot of jurisdictions to have, and basically the title would change to a community service officer. He would still perform code enforcement duties, but he would actually take on a little bit more as far as helping with some of these crashes that we have over along Minor Street or over along Water Street where the parking lots are. And that's just one of the things that would be helpful. And as I go through the presentation, you'll see traffic accidents do take up a bit of our time. And so it's really a good way to, if we expand our community service officer program, you know, in the future to help with parking enforcement, if we have a part-time community service officer, this is a really good way to get somebody introduced to law enforcement. So that's the direction that I'd like to at least start that process in 2022. And then obviously down at number 3, we've already been working with the Sheriff's Department and the Jefferson Center for Mental Health and Carrie Lindbergh. She's fantastic. She comes in and she'll either be at the police department or she'll ride with an officer a few hours in Idaho Springs once a week, depending on time. So I've also partnered with the Mountain Youth Network to have them come in and have some kids come in and actually do some artwork for our building. I think it's an opportunity for us to, you know, introduce ourselves to the youth in our area. And so I'm really excited about that. They're going to come in this week, take a look at the building and see what they can do to help us, you know, with, you know, when you walk in the building, I want it to be prideful. You know, there's a lot of pride in our organization. There's a lot of pride in law enforcement being a police officer. So that's one of the things that we wanted to do. The other thing is we're really excited about our webpage. You know, we made some big headway in that this year. And we added a crime fighters tab on our webpage so that when we have videos or photographs of people that we want to talk to about specific incidents, we have a place to put it. We have a place to put it so that we can try to identify these folks. So that's one of the things that we're going to work on. And I believe we just set that up. And yeah, so that's, I see that Councilman Clark has his hand up.
Chief, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
If not to go back or take any more time, but real quick, I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we talk about another community service officer? Wow.
You are muted.
If you'd, yeah, there you go.
Sorry, I don't know what that was all about.
Oh, I didn't want to hear you talk, so I made echoes. Sorry. Sorry, Jimmy.
No problem, Art. Chief, you got me back there, sir?
Yes, I got you.
Cool. If we're gonna transition Zach over into a community service officer, I know, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we have some talk about maybe hiring another code enforcement guy to help out? Would that change kind of the way, or would we have one code enforcement officer possibly in the future and then one quote community service officer, one of each to serve maybe as a team, or both have different titles, one focusing more on code enforcement, or are we just changing the name community service officer, but he's still the code enforcement person? sorry, just the confusion. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to.
No, what you just,
Whatever.
Mayor, through you, Councilman Clark, what you just said is exactly right. So really, it's a change in title more than it is job duties. So community service officers would also do code enforcement. The other thing is, if we had a part-time, if they were both community service officers, they both could be trained in traffic investigations, and it would give us coverage basically throughout the entire week, because some of the other things that our community service officers deal with, they deal with animal control issues, people not with their dogs on leash and things like that. So they do other things besides code enforcement. Code enforcement, frankly, I feel like doesn't take a lot of Zach's time right now. It's parking enforcement that takes a fair amount of his time, and abandoned motor vehicles. And so I had envisioned it that the community service officer, they take on the code enforcement duties along with additional duties. So
Sure. And real quick, Chief, since we have our own downtown or district parking enforcement through, a third party, have you seen relief in that as to your officers as a whole for enforcing parking, as well as, Zach himself? Have you seen like a little bit of relief now that that's kind of really implicated? It's kind of in its, running its own course. Do you notice a decrease in like, let's say, calls for service, for the lack of better words, on Zacharias?
So I don't. That's a tough one. Just that because of my experience, because they were here when I got here, so I'm not really sure what it was like before that. But I would say that there are times when I think the city. Hopefully, I'm not overstepping here, but the city would like to see more of those parking folks in town, and they're not available. Certainly, I think the city definitely helps with that. As far as the uniformed officers, we don't typically go out and do that unless we're called to something, or something's really egregious. Somebody's parked the wrong way on a one-way street or something like that, that needs to be handled. So that's a hard question. I would say that Zach and the third-party entity, they work fairly well together. I think he sort of supplements that. But there's times when it seems like they're not in town, or there's not very many. And so we kind of supplement them, I think, with our code enforcement officer.
Sure. Well, Chief, thank you very much for clearing those up for me. I appreciate that. And but I don't want to run your time over that you're presenting to us. It's precious in its own way. So yep. Thank you very much.
No problem. No, it's fine. So, and then just continuing on, I do want to stop just for a second and credit Cindy Tooling, our records person. She did a fantastic job with these graphs and pulling up this information. She provides me monthly reports every month that really show a lot of the information. So, I mean, these are more gee whiz. Certainly, it's Thursday and Friday were our busiest days last year. It's always kind of an interesting thing to see. And then you look at the spike during the day. That's a little hard to see, but it's basically the time of day. So it's obvious that from about 9 in the morning until 7, 8 o'clock, or 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening is when we're at the busiest times. So these are things that we can look at when we're looking at our staffing once we get a little more staff, but it helps with those things. So our calls for service in 2021 were down a little bit, and I don't know how to put a finger on it other than, obviously people say the pandemic might be part of that. I also think that we weren't as proactive as we could be, and I think a lack of manpower and some of the adverse things that our agency were going through contributed to some of that. So those numbers were a little bit lower, but this is basically all of the crime that we have to report to the NIBR system, which is the federal reporting system, which again, Cindy does a fantastic job of doing. This is a little harder to read. So I'm gonna go to the next slide because really it compares the years. And I think this is the one that's the most telling. So if you look at this, one of the things that I was explaining to other city staff either today or last week was our stolen vehicles. So our stolen vehicles, if you look at this number, was 27 for 2021. And in 2020, it was 14. So this actually coincides with another interesting report that we just saw is that Colorado actually leads the United States in stolen vehicles. And a lot of people don't know that. It's kind of surprising and shocking for folks to learn that. But that's unfortunately one of those things that Colorado got the #1 thing in. I'm not sure why recently. So that's been reported by the Denver Post, Denver Gazette, and other news outlets. So we're seeing the same sort of thing in our community. You know, folks need to make sure they lock their doors, but we're seeing an uptick in property crime. So that's the other thing I wanted to point out is our burglaries were up. So it almost doubled. And, you know, whether it's a lack of manpower or just, I guess, the human condition during a pandemic and some folks are hurting, they may be using drugs and doing what they have to survive. So those are some of the things that we're aware of. And these are important because these kinds of numbers and these comparisons help me as a police leader figure out what can I do to have an impact on that, and how can I change these numbers. So, but it's important for folks to see. And so there are definitely things within our community, whether it's the legislative situation, some of the things with the court system. There was just a big expose by a news outlet about holding the rest of the criminal justice system accountable regarding judges and DAs and making sure that when folks are caught, when they're held accountable for their actions. And sometimes there's unintended consequences that happen, like crime going up. So that's an interesting one. This goes back to the vehicle crashes. We do have a fair number of crashes. Most of these are minor. Occasionally out on I-70, they're not. Occasionally they're very serious, but so our crashes are about the same. They're a little bit less than some of the prior years, but if they're 14% of the reports taken, it makes me really excited that we can have our community service officer help us with some of these, not all of them. Certainly if it's DUI or suspended license or there's another crime involved, then obviously an officer is going to be involved. But what we're talking about are some of these little fender benders that happen in the parking lots during our busy season, during the rafting season. So our citation numbers were down. We were not writing as many tickets, and that's certainly something that I'd like to tackle in the coming year. I think staffing levels would really help with this, but this is going to be one of those things that we're going to work on in 2021 and 2022. And again, the accident numbers aren't exorbitant for the town, you know. So really citations are to prevent crashes and get people to change their driving habits and drive safer. So one of the things that we did look at that's very hot button is use of force. Obviously across the country, there are folks that are concerned about what's going on with police and use of force. And so we looked at our numbers. So if you look on the left, that's the ISPD use of force. I believe it was 34 incidents of use of force. And we do look at the demographics, okay? We looked at the demographics of our community and the demographics of the folks that unfortunately we had to use force with. And so when you look at that, and then you look at the demographics of Idaho Springs based on you know, Google search of what those demographics would be, they're very similar numbers, right? So that's one of the things that a police leader, you want to make sure that you don't have biased people. You don't have officers that are picking on specific races or, you know, that are biased. You don't want those people as part of your police force. And so this is one of those things that we looked at. And so, you know, I'm proud to say that it's very, very much similar as far as the demographics go. So it's always something to bear in mind. So use of force. One of the things that I want to I want to add, as far as the numbers go with use of force, there could be 2 officers on one incident, and one has their gun pointed at somebody, and then the other one uses their taser. So both of those would be represented in this graph. So when you add these numbers up, that's why these numbers are a little bit different than what the overall number is, because what you're looking at in the overall number is just the number of incidents where force was used, because there could be 2 officers and a deputy using force or something of that nature. So our numbers look okay. We don't have a big spike in our use of force. We had 34 incidents in 2021, and certainly, you know, some suspects just they don't want to listen, and they put us in a position where, you know, we have to use force. So, but certainly there's not a big spike here, and I think that it's important to watch these things, because if there is, then what's going on there, right? We want to look into that. Training, we did put a lot of training in. We had 658 hours last year, so an average of 82 hours of training per officer. We sent officers to de-escalation training. An officer went to a detective school, and another became a field sobriety instructor. So training's critical. That's really what helps agencies maintain their professionalism, stay in tune with best practices that are happening across the country. And so it's just very, very important. You know, I told the officers, you know, if we're not going to brag, if we're not going to toot our own horn, nobody's going to toot it for us. So, you know, we really had a lot of accomplishments in 2021. I know council saw some of these during the budget presentation. So, but we did have some great accomplishments. I'm really proud of, like I said, the website. We've got that up and running. I think that's going to help with recruiting. And, you know, we had Corporal Frost got the Officer of the Year for 2019, which was obviously delayed with COVID, and Danielle Lewis got a life-saving award. We had a really nice story over Halloween, replacing the pumpkins for the kids, and then obviously participated in the trunk or treat event, which was it was really well. I heard great feedback during the trunk or treat event downtown on Minor Street. The kids went up and down the street, and we had a number of police officers and police cars down there, along with a number of businesses in the community. So I basically want to thank everybody for your support, because 2021 was a bit of a challenging year for the agency, and we really appreciate the community's support. We always felt that we had the support of our community. I don't know how many times people come up and say, thank you for what you do. And so I want to leave this real quick. So I want to show one little video, and before I let you go, and I still have time. So I'll show one quick little video and talk about this event just for a few minutes, and then I'll open it up for any questions you might have. Let me see if I can get this video to work. Are you all seeing that?
Well, so far it says, thank you for supporting ISPD.
Okay, I was afraid of that.
There we go.
So this was an incident. Are you seeing this now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure most of you've seen this, but I'm going to rewind it one more time. But this was an incident at the Squatch store on October 8th at about, it was 2100 or 2052, so almost 11 o'clock at night, or yeah. And this gentleman came off I-70, and he decided to slam into cars in the parking lot there at the Squatch. And it was a very scary moment for the people that were, you know, terrorized by this person. And to me, it was a reminder of the kind of thing that can just, as I like to say, I-70 brings in some very interesting things, and a lot of people, and it can sometimes be dangerous. You know, our officers have been out there and had felony stops with people that were pointing guns at each other. We had the sheriff's department had a vehicle that was shot at since I've been here. So it's interesting. And this officer did a fantastic job in this case. And you'll see him come into the screen here in just a minute as the suspect is leaving. Officer Sanford comes around the corner and he gets into a pursuit with this vehicle. He does a great job. And there's deputies that assist him as well. And when I say he does a great job, he talked to this guy and was able to get this guy into custody without he had his gun drawn, but that was it. So he was able to talk. They didn't have to use force. And this gentleman has since been sentenced to 2 years in prison. He had a pretty lengthy criminal record. And so I appreciate what the men and women do at our police department. They go out there and they're willing to go when they're sent, and they're willing to try to keep the community safe. And I guess what I would say is they are appreciative of the pay bump, and they're appreciative of the support of the community and of council. And again, I'm available for questions.
Chief, thanks. That was a great report.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
But Nate, I do have one,
John.
can I make one comment going back to Zachary?
Yes.
I just want to make sure, a lot of the things that I hear around town are in fact things about garbage, cigarette butts, cars that are parked for too long on the city streets. I want to just make sure that we continue to focus on those. I know that certainly using Zach in other areas, if there's a waste of time, that would make sense monetarily. But I don't want anybody to feel like as if we're not looking at the little nitty gritty neighborhood stuff. And that I just want to make sure I like to underline things. So if anybody's listening, they didn't say, hey, Kate, let that like slide by. And I just yelled at her yesterday about something. So anyway, just reiterating that. Thanks.
I completely agree with you. I agree. It's I think that's why at some point we need to look at maybe in the next year, looking at another position or a part-time position to increase in those efforts as well. And he is one person, so I don't want to stretch him too thin, but certainly I think he's capable of I would say doing it all. And
Right.
but I'm listening to you.
Two people, absolutely. And just you mentioned like a crime tip hotline. I think that's a brilliant idea. In fact, I had reached out to you last week to set up a time to talk to you about something similar, and also seeing if we could start utilizing the cameras that the residents and businesses have around town to kind of come together and say, hey, this is an area of town that's really having problems. Who wants to put their cameras out there so that we can review them on those days when we have those problems? Obviously, we don't want to go into everybody's personal data or what they do in their backyard. I don't want to know. You don't want to know. But I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. I have cameras on my house, and I would gladly put others if it's going to make our streets safer.
There are systems out there that obviously people would sign up to participate in, and that allows law enforcement to access those. So those do exist, and certainly that's something that we can research and figure out as a community if that's if we set that up. And folks just have to opt in if they're interested, and there's ways to set those things up. Yes.
If mayor and council is into it, maybe that's something that we talk about at another work session.
Okay. I'll
Any
start.
more questions for Chief? Well, it's 7:01. Could I make a suggestion? We take about 3 minutes for a comfort break. We'll reconvene a regular session at 7:05. Thank you. See you in a few minutes.
Did you get dinner, Wonder?
I have my leftover popper burger. Yes,
Okay.
it's delicious. And sweet potato fries that are good at any temperature whatsoever.
Kelsey had a good idea about going for lunch on the one-on-one meeting because it's like not super formal.
Oh.
So I was thinking, and I told Patty already, but if we have time that works, I know tomorrow's crazy, but it's not a super hurry, but maybe I could take you out to lunch or buy lunch and bring it back and we could just do it that way. Cause that way, food is always good.
Okay. So if tomorrow is crazy, John, we could always change it to a different
just-
day. I'm open.
I didn't realize the thing with the switch over for the water meter
Yeah.
thingies is so I just don't want it to interfere with anything else that's happening. So I just want to make sure it works for you.
Sure. So if we can just gauge the morning if you feel.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Okay, that's fine.
Mayor, really quickly before the meeting starts, are you available tomorrow at 11? By any chance?
I'm sorry, John, I couldn't hear you.
Linda had asked if she brought the computer tomorrow, if I could switch out your computer to that one. And she'll be here at 11, but I can also do it without her. So I just wanted to let you know it's coming and to make a plan.
Absolutely. You got it.
Okay.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the Monday, January 31st, 2022 regular council meeting at 7:06. And as probably everyone knows, we had a almost entire town outage of internet. So fortunately, we had a fifth Monday this month, and that's why we're conducting it here on the 31st. I'd like a roll call, please.
Okay. Mayor Chuck Harmon,
Here.
Scott Pennell,
Here.
Art Cacavelli, Jim Clark,
Here.
Kate Collier, John Curtis.
Here.
Lisa Manifold.
Here. You got it.
So we're
All
still
right.
waiting on Art and
I think Art's here. I thought I just saw him down.
oh, maybe he's just not back yet. He just didn't answer a roll call. Neither did Kate.
Oh, Kate and Art are both here.
I'm here.
Art Cacavelli.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the outhouse is way down on the other side of the property.
It's all right. Well, Jonathan, if you would cue the flag, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. You'd all stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
Invisible.
with liberty
liberty
and
and
justice for all.
Oh,
Thank you. Please be seated. Going to make a motion for the next two. Based on our votes, we have an appointment to fill for city council, and I would like to nominate Lisa Manifold. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a first and I have a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great job. Welcome, Lisa.
All right,
Thank you.
now we
I'm
have
very excited.
a swearing in of the newly appointed council.
If you would raise your right hand, please.
Get in the screen.
I, Lisa Manifold, do solemnly declare and affirm that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and the laws of the state of Colorado, and the laws and ordinances of the city of Idaho Springs, and that I will faithfully, well, and truly, and to the best of my skill and ability, perform the duties of council member for the city of Idaho Springs, upon which I'm about to enter.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good to have you, Lisa.
Thank you for your confidence. I am really excited.
All right. The next item on the agenda. Again, based by an earlier vote, I would like to make the motion that we have Mayor Pro Tem John Curtis. Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Welcome, John, and thank you.
Thank you for having faith in me.
All right, we move down to agenda approval. May I have a motion, please?
I'll move to approve the agenda for January 31st, 2022 meeting.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Does anyone tonight feel they have a conflict of interest? All right, hearing none. I'll move on to approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes from January 10th, 2022.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion? All right. Please raise your right hand and say aye for approval.
Aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, motion carries. We've approved the minutes. Now, could I get a motion to approve the bills?
I'll move to approve the bills from January 16th, 2022 through January 31st, 2022.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, Art, second. Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark,
Yes.
Kate Collier,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any public comment tonight?
No, Mayor, we do not.
All right. City attorney, I don't think she's on. We spent some time with her, very productive time. I'd like to go to city administrator.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You have my report with one request for action, please.
All right, could I have a motion, please?
I'll move to approve an engagement letter from Mayberry and Company LLC to audit the city's financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021 for an amount not to exceed $10,400. If a single audit is needed, an additional fee of $3,500 will be added.
All right, thank you, Scott. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
All right, any discussion?
Is there a line item for this?
Yes, there is, Mayor Pro Tem, there, it is spread over several departments.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, roll call, please.
Okay. Mayor Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark,
Yes.
Kate Collier,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving to Assistant City Administrator.
Mayor and council, you have my staff report with no request for action.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. Deputy City Clerk, please.
Mayor and council, you have my staff report with no request for action.
All right, thank you. Our finance officer is sick. So we will continue on to police chief.
Mayor and council, my staff report is submitted and I have one request for action.
All right. Do I have a motion on the tasers?
I'll move to approve the 5-year contract with Axon Enterprise, Inc. in the amount of $32,400.68 to replace tasers. Do you want me to go on with the rest, or is that enough?
Kate, I think, yeah, maybe we better go on just because it's a multi-year contract.
Okay, the contract is divided into annual installments over a 5-year period of $6,480.12 for the first year, 2022, and $6,480.14 for the remaining 4 years, 23 to 26.
Kate, thank you very much. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I
A
second.
second.
All right, motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark,
Yes.
Kate Collier,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, very good. I'd like to move down to Public Works Department.
Mayor and council, you have my staff report, and I do have 4 requests for action, please.
All right, it looks like the first request for action is for the Citizens Park bathroom remodel. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve $163,895 to TCC Corporation from line item number 21-00-6024 for Citizens Park restroom remodel.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion.
Chuck, I looked into this a little bit, and I brought a contractor down to the bathroom over the weekend. Just from the looks of the outline that Andy also sent me today, the bathroom, they went to see the scope of the project based on what we received in our packet. The contractor I spoke to, who's local, who had no idea that this was a project that was up for bid, would say that the scope of the project is well above what they would have charged here locally. So I'm looking at it again, and I had a couple questions based on the line items of general conditions costing $26,000, specialties costing $24,000, and I wasn't sure what the bond meant. I'm looking at, just as a layman, almost $60,000 of money that I cannot tell you what that's going to do or where it's going to go. And in the scope of the plan with the contractor that we're talking about, they were talking about they weren't including the roof line, exterior, mold mitigation, asbestos mitigation, and all of these things were highlighted by the person that I spoke to on Saturday. So that's my comment. We can make a vote. We can go from there.
If I may, this was advertised locally or on BidNet, which the city has approved for us to use, and it was given to local contractors. And these are the 3 bids that we received. The contractor
And I realize that.
the contractor that did send it back and had those conditions meant that he was not going to work on any other portion of the roof other than where the protrusions were for the furnaces and that type of thing. He wasn't going to do the gutters or anything that wasn't in the scope of his work. I did send
And that
a
makes me
set of
concerned.
plans to all of the council members, and that's what everybody's bid was based upon.
And I hear what you're saying. I'm saying that above this 163 that I already think and have already had verification is over and above what it should cost. There's still work that's going to have to be done on this visitor center. And just for the record, you can build a home in some states for this amount of money. And we're
Yes,
talking
you
about
can.
basically an interior remodel. I think we need to investigate this further. We need to find a better way to find our local contractors to get them involved. We're having a discussion. I'm just putting my thoughts out there.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you, Kate. And this was the Citizens Park remodel, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And it definitely needs a remodel, 100%.
Oh, no, it definitely needs a remodel, but I had some of the same concerns as Kate because I had to look up what specialties were, and specialties are the job for a person who's doing just one aspect of it, but we have some of the specialties listed down below, and I didn't see as to what the specialties were. I just feel like they're not willing to do any mold remediation or any water damage, and that bathroom has mold and water damage remediation, so that's not going to be the end of this remodel. Like, this is a piece of it.
Oh, I would really encourage not only this contractor, but other contractors to please step forward and bid. We have a hard time getting free bids. And it isn't just us. You know, it's everybody. You know, if there's a way to save.
Sorry, Chuck. Damn delays. I'm sorry, Chuck. I don't mean to speak over you. But the contractors locally, I'm going to talk to them about how we can get the message out to them more efficiently, because I don't want it to be a he said, she. I believe both sides. Somebody didn't hear about it, but there are contractors locally that I'd like to access. That's all.
Yeah, I would think though, and I don't disagree with you, Kate, but I think when we go to bid, it has to be across the board, even, Stephen. So, I mean, we can't call one contractor and not call others that may be available. So I think.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we should definitely
implied.
make sure our local contractors have a bid.
Well, how do you make sure that you contact them, correct?
Well, the city can do that. I don't need to do anything.
Well, that's my point. If we contact the local and we don't contact the guy that's in Evergreen and he hears it thereafter.
Maybe we put the onus on the local businesses and say, this is the way that we are sending out our bids on BidNet. That's all we have to do.
Okay.
One of the bids is a local contractor.
Which one?
DJ Smith is a local contractor that has done a lot of work with the city, the visitor center, and other projects around town.
Is that the one you're using?
No, he was not the lowest bid.
Right, gotcha.
So I'll weigh in on this a little bit. We're in an environment right now of inflation, and construction is out of this world right now. So that's one reason for the higher prices. Another thing that we might do is ask some of the local contractors if they wanted to be on a list. We can make them aware when bids are out there, but we have to maintain a fair process when bids go out, that we give everybody the opportunity to bid it.
Right.
And then once the bid's taken, we can't change from that. So we did get 3 bids on this project, and John did the right bid process and advertised it the way it was supposed to be advertised. So I don't feel bad that contractor's didn't see it out there. I wish he would have.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that any of these bids have to be accepted by council simply because the bids are in. We can go back for review.
That's correct.
Does Does this mean, are you like suggesting we table this one for another month? What would be?
I don't know. I mean, this is not my forte. I mean, this is not my forte at all. All I'm saying is that, I mean, I understand the inflation of projects, but there are simply things in this proposal that have not been eked out to the point where I understand exactly what $60,000 and why it needs 3 different project managers to perform a remodel on the inside of a bathroom that is really not doing any heavy lifting. So all I'm saying is that this seems like a very, very wild use of money in an environment where you guys have been talking for months and months and months about how we need to not waste money. So I'm coming in and saying, I see this as a waste of money. We need other bids.
I think if we can put it out to bid, that's fine. If we include everything, I guarantee it's going to be way more than it is right now. Typically like the landscaping at the library, which was way out of line.
So I have a
I don't know if that
question,
number is.
since we're on the subject. During the construction management, are we putting all this burden on John Bordoni? I thought the architect, isn't there an architect on this project that reviews these bids and makes sure that what is out there is being covered in the bid and the scope of the bid?
Yes, there was.
So the architect reviewed all 3 bids, right?
Yes, he did.
So during construction, is the architect also overseeing to make sure everything's done? This isn't all put on you, is it, John?
The majority of it is on me, because if we have the architect equally involved, the price of that is going to go up also.
John, 2 questions, if I may. Is bid.net the one place that we put out all of our bids?
It has been, yes.
Okay. My second question is, what is the plan? Because this contractor TCC was really clear that if there was any kind of mold remediation, which I totally understand, or any kind of water damage that they would not be dealing with, what was the plan if that was found, or if you knew of that? Like, what would that be, another bid or another like a subcontract?
It would probably be wind up as subcontract, yes.
Okay.
And again, I can weigh in. I have some construction background, but the reason you can't bid the unknown, and I think that contractor is talking about something that you don't see from the surface that might show up later. He can't bid that as an unknown. So if something like that shows up, it's outside the scope of the original work.
That's correct. It's kind of like the other request I have for the visitor center. We just don't know until we start doing the project. It's much like not every, but most of the street projects we did. We just don't know until we start doing it. And yes, it does add up.
John, I totally agree with that, but you've always had and presented such a knowledgeable and had such a good background into that you wholeheartedly believe whatever you bring to council, and what, you know, your item actions are typically pretty spot on. I think there's enough topic of concern on this remodel, which I don't feel like you need to shoulder the weight of any of the discussion simply because you're presenting it. But just because of where it is, I'm not sure that a yes or no, either way, it is going to feel appropriate for you or council as a whole, to where, and I don't know the process of it now, but Mayor, are we allowed to table this and discuss it and put it out for rebid?
I believe so. You know, we may have an additional contractor or 2. I mean, I you know, it'd be great if we had 6 or 7 or 8 bids. One was local. Obviously, there's at least one that did not know about it. you know, I'm going to do a vote, and I think that we did get 3 bids on it, and if it's a no, then I guess we'll put it back out for a rebid. I don't know what more we could do at this point.
Can we just table it without voting on it?
That's my question, because of where the position of this particular item for action is, being as how it is up for approval or disapproval. Does that mean we still have to vote on it, or can we subtract it out?
I believe the procedure would be the person who made the motion withdraw the motion.
Did somebody move to approve it yet? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
So there's that option, and then where we could go forward with a vote, but it doesn't change the scope of the project either way, guys. It just means that we've kind of agreed to send it back out for a bid, another bid, either way.
I think if we do send it out to bid, I'm sorry. If we do send it out to bid, we do need to change the scope of the work.
Right.
And unfortunately, as you were saying about the general conditions and unknown, we don't have control over what a contractor is going to do with his people. If he has 6 supervisors and 1 worker, you know, there's not a lot we can do with that.
Right. No, yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. I agree. I don't want this to be at the stage it is to where we're forced to vote on it. If it gets voted down, the process of getting it back to where it is currently, I don't think it's fair to you, and as hard as you've worked on getting this to where it is, John.
Sure.
So that's what I'm saying. I am saying I think there's enough concern on the money aspect of it for our citizens paying for this, that there's a little bit of confusion, or wait, that seems like a little too much, even though we know how expensive things are today versus a year ago or whatever. What I don't want to do is cause more work or more and having a discouragement fall onto your shoulders, John, to where you have to bring this back up to where it is now. So that's not fair to you. And if that's how this is going to go, because we quote unquote have to vote on it, I don't agree with that.
I think we could table it.
John, I think we should be totally 100% able to. That Scott, you recuse the motion on this. It's that simple. We table it, and it takes a lot of work back out of what John has done, as well as the city, to not cause any extra ill will or burden on Mr. Bardoni.
Andy, do I have that procedure correct? If Scott so chose, can he withdraw his motion?
I think you could certainly do that and table the decision.
All right.
I just had one question. Did the mold in the water come up after the contractor got the bid? Did he bring it to our attention, or was it obvious before and he chose not to bid on it?
No, apparently that was a contractor that Councilman Collier brought into the project after the bid has been let, that said that there was mold and water to deal with.
Okay, so we don't know for a fact if that's correct, because there's conditions you can look at, and one person would call it mold and one would not. So I mean,
that's correct.
That hasn't been clarified that is actually that. But I mean, we will clarify that. But
2 of the contractors did look at this project and did visit the site and never said anything about mold or water. The highest bid, you can see what kind of bid he put in. He never even looked at it or contacted us. He just put in a bid.
Well, some of them just put in a high bid because they don't want the business, but they want to be on the list for maybe future bids. If I'm, the way I've had my experience, they want to be notified, identified, but they don't want that particular project, so they'll just get a high bid and hopefully keep their name in front of you. I mean, that's used a lot, I think. But anyway, so if we went out, if we table it, would we go out and change the scope? Or would we have to have someone come in to verify, in fact, there's water and mold, or there is not water and mold? So when we go to bid that, we would either have it included or not included in our scope.
Well, what we could do is we could change the scope of the job to say that if it is encountered, what would you do and how much would that cost us?
All right, thank you,
So
John.
we can probably take the 163 and add another $40,000 to that. So, but that's fine. I want to make sure that we are spending the citizens' money correctly. And everybody here knows that I am not one just to spend money to be spending the money.
I agree. I know that for a fact.
So,
John Curtis, I saw you had your hand up.
yeah, I mean, we take the risk of no bids if we get turned down or huge increase,
It's
on a different bid. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's the risk. If you put it out for bid, again, our environment keeps going up. We could risk having higher bids too.
But we already know that it's probably gonna cost more than it says anyway. I mean, somebody else has walked in there that has been in there several times and said, there's more to it than this, than is under the purview of this plan. So you do have a mold issue and you do have water issues and you do have gutter issues. Somebody has to fix that. So no matter what, this is not an accurate price. It's either going to be higher than what these guys bidded it at, or someone's going to come in and bid it higher and have it done correctly. I don't want them to tile over mold problems. I don't see how that benefits anything either.
Did your guy, did he do anything physically, or was the mold just sitting out there? I mean, how did he discover?
I mean, I have pictures of what I took when I was in the bathroom, but the person that I was with, who has worked all over our town, said that that's mold in the toilet area. And we were only able to look in one stall because the other one was occupied. And I didn't want to stand in there with the camera too long because Nate would have come to my house and arrested me. But
I'm sure.
but
I'm sure.
Exactly. They said that was in fact mold, and then the outside, the what's it called? For the drains, the water drains, what are they called?
the gutters.
Gutters. Yeah, the gutters are damaged on the outside, and that was also under the list of things that they weren't going to take care of. To the contrary, the windows are obviously in need of repair, but the brickwork and the roof looked good from where they stood.
But there's so many different variances of mold. There's some mold that can be cleaned up with Lysol. I mean, and there's some molds that are very dangerous. So I mean, get something and say it's mold. Everybody's, say, oh my God, there's mold. We're all going to die. That's not the case. There's a lot of degrees of mold. Some of them are very are not harmful at all, and taking care of them is not an expensive thing. Am I correct on that, John?
That is correct.
Yeah. So if it's not serious mold, and it may be, but if it's not, it may not, may not be as expensive as we think, because mold is, there's a lot of varieties of mold, and some are not harmful at all and very easily taken care of. I listen to Tom Martino, and that's what he says.
Could I see a show of hands for those who would like this project to be rebid?
Well, let me say one more thing, Chuck. If the scope of work wasn't as thorough as it should have been, I mean, Kate's got a point that when you bid the project and then the contractor comes in and starts adding all this stuff, you're basically handing off trust that he's going to charge you correctly. Where it's a bid process, it's more competitive. So if the scope of work wasn't completely covered, then that's a valid point as to maybe why we table it and we discuss how we go forward. If we negotiate those prices with the current low bidder, or if we put it out to bid, those are two options.
All right. All right.
Yeah,
yes, Andy.
So I'm a bit concerned about postponing this. I certainly understand the discussion. This project has been delayed for a while. for reasons beyond our control. We did use a local architect engineer for designing this over the summer. We never got. It was very slow to. It was very slow process, and we just never got the drawings and the specs that we needed in order to bid this. And John and I knew that in order to get this project done right, you would need to spend some money, and council recognizes too, when we hired this person. We said we need to go a different direction, get a firm, an architect that can draw a tight set of specs and get them back to us on a timely basis. So we lost some time, and we did work with a local person. That person was not able to get those drawings ultimately to us, and we had to go to a different architect, not local, unfortunately, and get the specs. And we took time to make sure there was a discrepancy in the specs. We found out when this was bid. It was minor, but we felt it was important to make sure everyone had the same information. So we recontacted the 3 low bidders to make sure they were all bidding on the same information. And that key point was all stainless steel appliances.
I do remember
And
that.
you can imagine the cost of stainless steel appliances and the lead time is a huge difference than porcelain or a residential setup. We're trying to, when we renovate this, we're trying to do it right and to make sure that it's durable. And yes, it is expensive. We have had sticker shock on several projects over the last year. So I am a bit concerned about, I guess I would like a little more clarification. If we do postpone it, what are we trying to accomplish? I think just simply rebidding it is not going to be very productive. We did send this, and I apologize, I don't have it right here with me, but this bid was sent directly to one other local contractor that we have done previous business with, and we did not receive a bid. And as John pointed out, we did get, of the 3 bids we did get, one is a local contractor, actually based in Golden, but does a lot of work here and formerly owned a business here in town and is known to us and has done previous work for us. So I'm just unsure about what we're going to accomplish by rebidding it. If there are mold or environmental issues, it's been our experience that that's typically going to be a specialty and would have to be an environmental firm that would have to come in and do the mitigation. That's really no different than when we demolished several homes for the parking areas. You have the demolition person, the firm that does the demolition, but they aren't equipped or licensed or trained to handle asbestos mitigation or mold mitigation. And we, with those projects, and you may recall, some of you may recall, we had to retain an environmental firm on older buildings. You have to typically do the mitigation before you can do the demolition. That's a little different situation, but it's similar in that if the work has to be stopped because mold's found, we're going to have to, it'll be probably working with the contractor and John to find a firm that can do the mitigation. So I just throw that out that I just don't know what we're going to accomplish. We can certainly try to, I don't really think we're in a position to negotiate the price with the low bidder. I think we would have to rebid, but I'm just not sure if we're going to be in a better situation a month or 2 down the road.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. Go ahead, Jim.
All right, sorry. Andy, and with all due respect, if you're right, you're right. But why the concern with you to, if it's been so long anyway, what's the rush now?
Part of the rush would be
understood.
Prices going up just by themselves for labor and for supplies. I mean, we're going to get hit higher. Pardon?
Yeah. So
I'm just saying you have that's a consideration.
And with inflation, they'll go back down again because construction will slow. I mean, it's an ebb and flow of any one of these businesses. I'm sorry, guys. it's not the
Inflation-
reason
whoa,
not
whoa,
to do
whoa,
this
whoa.
right.
I don't
Inflation's not going down. I
necessarily-
don't know where you get that from. It is not going down this year, so let's put that one to the side. I'm not saying we couldn't get a better price, but supplies and labor is going up daily.
Well, you know, it's hard to say. I can tell you, I've never known anyone that could really nail if that inflation monster was going to go up and at how much and for how long. You know, there's been some real poor crystal balls out there. So I don't know. I tell you what, I think the best thing we should do right now, I have a motion and a second. I'd like to get a roll call on this. And if it fails, it fails. And, you know, we'll put it up for rebid, but I would certainly encourage anyone that has another contractor or three that can help us out with bids, please have them step forward, because we would all love to save money the first time, you know, if it's possible. So I have a first, I have a second, and I'd like to call for a roll call on this.
Okay, Mayor Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
No,
Jim Clark,
No.
Kate Collier,
No,
John Curtis,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold,
No.
4-3. Nope,
All right. That was 4-3 against, correct, Wonder?
that is correct.
All right. Then we will, you know, endeavor to get another bid set on this. And I do hope we can save money.
Mayor, just to make sure, I'm going to contact the architect and tell him we need to include everything on that building, exterior and interior, water and mold, and we'll see where it goes from there.
it'd be more than 163.
Yes.
Yeah,
it will
John,
be.
I'm afraid.
It will
yeah, I'm
be far
afraid
more
this-
than $163,000.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it was 250, 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. But yeah,
Can
I
we-
understand, John.
Can we make sure that we include the firm that Kate brought in there over the weekend?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, if they're a licensed contractor and they are able to do bonding, that's fine.
you know, I have a question about that. You know, when I worked out at the airport, we would bring in contractors and I don't know what the terminology was. Andy probably knows. They had to pay their craftsmen a certain wage. Otherwise they couldn't do contract work for the airport. Do we do anything like that?
That's called Davis Bacon.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's federal contracts.
Okay, it's not, well, okay. Well, no, if I brought somebody in at my location and I had a location on airport, a business that had to fall under that, or I couldn't bring in the contractor
Yeah, that falls under federal dollars mostly.
because it's the
The
airport.
Davis yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, you know, Mr. Mayor, last time we had our major meeting, the one before last, oil was at $75 a barrel, and I think today it's almost at $85 a barrel. So there's your inflation.
Yeah,
Well,
and I
like I
think
said, you know, it's hard to have a crystal ball on that. And I
Well,
really do hope we save. I'm afraid these bids will probably be quite a bit higher.
If it's higher and we're getting more work done, we have to apply that theory that maybe, yes, it's higher, but on a percentage basis, if it's truly mold that needs to be taken care of and it's in water leaks and stuff, it is more expensive. Is it really more expensive that for all the work we're getting compared to what we paid for not getting all the work? I know what I think, but I mean, that's a question I think we will have to put it before us.
But contractors are going to tend to overbid now to protect themselves.
They'll have to.
Yep. They will overbid because now there's an unknown and they're not going to have a low bid.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. I'd like to move to second item, the pickup truck for the Public Works Department. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve $4,800, $620 to whatever motors. Yeah.
48,000.
$48,620, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Second,
To Dell Bush,
Dallenbach,
Bach Motors, line item 21, 20, 60, 25 for 22 Chevy pickup.
All right,
second,
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
second.
Second,
All right. Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Well, I have some question. I have a question. May I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I really should call for discussion on that, Art.
What size Chevy pickup is that?
oh, sorry, it's in the specification should be there. It's a 3/4 ton
Oh,
Chevy
3/4 ton.
pickup.
Okay, 3/4 ton. Okay.
And let me just preface this one also. I order this pickup from the state of Colorado purchasing system. So they go out to all these dealers across the state and they get bids on this type of pickup for the whole state department, whether it's Department of Transportation, whether it's Department of Revenue, any of them. And these dealers bid on these pickups and say, this is what I will charge for this pickup of this condition. And you can't really find any dealer that's going to go lower than what these prices are. So they consider this basically a pre-bid, that you don't have to secure more than one bid on it because they've already been through the bid process through the state.
No, I just,
No, I think you did right.
yeah, I mean, for that price, I thought it was the bigger Chevy. That's why I asked. No matter who you are, it's not a good time to buy a new car, but I'm sure you got the best price available with the process that you spoke of.
Well, John, I saw that came with the plow, the lift gate, 4-wheel drive truck, and the fact that it was from the state system.
Yeah.
I that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
The plow and the lift gate are what added $20,000 to the pickup.
yeah.
So
I think your actions taken to accommodate the bid presented to us now, as well as the chief for your new pickup. Both you guys did a stellar job on that.
Yeah.
I know if anybody, I know what equipment costs, and man, I just wish I could get into that realm of money for any of the stuff I need or have to have. So congrats all both you guys for this. So good job.
I wanted to say that I really appreciated the breakdown. I'm not a pickup truck person, but I appreciated seeing all the stuff that we're getting because I know how expensive these are. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, any more discussion? Could I have roll call, please?
Mayor Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark,
Yes.
Kate Collier,
yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to move down to the analytical instruments. Do I have a motion, please?
I moved to approve. Oh, go ahead, Kate.
No, I'll let Lisa go. It's your first one.
Okay, I move to approve $29,255 to Suez WTS Analytical Instruments, Inc. from line 5472-7310 for a new TOC analyzer.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark,
Yes.
Kate Collier,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to move down to the windows for the visitor center. Do I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the $20,000 to canning glass and gutters from line number 21-00-7041 to replace the windows at the visitor center.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll make a second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion?
I do. I just want, is this supposed to say up to $20,000, John, or because it looks like the bid is actually for 15,000, 727.16.
That's correct. Unfortunately, that's another one of those. This was a local contractor that's
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah.
We went down and looked at it, and in the visitor center, over the years, when they've remodeled and moved things around, they've put up walls in front of the windows. So unfortunately, he's going to have to remove portions of those walls to get to the windows to replace them. And we
Bummer.
don't know exactly how that was done. So there may be an increased cost in labor to get those windows replaced. That's why I'm requesting the additional money on that. And unfortunately,
No, that's fine. And actually, it's got a lot of windows that are hidden in there. I understand completely. It's actually a pretty good price for windows.
How many
It is.
windows, how many windows are there?
There's 28 in the building.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a good price.
All
And
right, any
also, he's requesting a 50% down payment to order materials and supplies before he starts.
You need to have that in the motion.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't put that in there. I should have put it.
That's
in.
okay. We can add that in.
All right, could I ask for a modification to the motion?
Who made the motion?
I did. Move to approve $20,000 to Canyon Glass and Gutters from line 21-00-7041 to replace the windows at the visitor centers, including a 50% down payment.
And I'll second that again.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Jim Clark,
Yes.
Kate Collier,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, moving along to the second page of the agenda, you'll see that we are looking to appoint council member John Curtis as the city's representative on the board of Clear Creek Fire Authority. And before I make that motion, John, I would just like for you to take a minute and tell council a little bit about your fire background.
17 years of volunteer fireman, the last 5 being fire chief, Foothills, just over by Genesee Lookout. I was previously on the Fire Authority board with Dennis Loveberry was here, and so I've had quite a bit of experience.
Thank you very much. So I would like to make the motion to appoint John Curtis as the city's representative on the board of the Clear Creek Fire Authority. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Thank you.
opposed?
Thank you.
All right. And then the next one is I would like to make a motion to appoint Kent Slaymaker to the Planning Commission in the alternate position. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
I'm sorry.
oh.
Who seconded?
I
did.
thought it was Lisa, but maybe it was Kate. I'm not.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank
maybe it was Lisa. You guys
I
aren't
think-
used to having female voices on there.
Well, it's that, and we have this little bit of lag too.
I'm gonna go
But,
with Kate. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Wonder. And so we have a motion, we have seconds. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. All right, Ken Slaymaker, motion passes.
Mayor, real quick, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is was that opening on the fire board from ex-mayor Hillman leaving, or wasn't he
Yes,
on that board too?
yes, Jimmy, you're right. He left and created that opening.
Okay, cool. That's it.
All right, anything else? I forget anything tonight? Well, I want to say thank you to everybody. A good council meeting. I really appreciate everyone's input. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Good night.
Everybody have a good week. Be safe.
Be safe tomorrow.